Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an webinar 2.0 with folks from Kenya and Africa this time. Last time we hosted an event 6 months ago, and I got the opportunity again to host this event. Last conversation was so much about how RI was reshaping and how AI has a huge play in RTM. And we were just wrapping our heads around how AI is shaping RTM. And now fast forwarded to 6 months, and we see that most of the businesses have adopted to AI solutions. We were talking to SME and mid-market accounts who already have AI solutions faster than big brands today in Kenya and Africa. And when last time I did this webinar, I thought, I learned so much. We basically made a playbook out of it, and we walked away with a lot of information from folks and CPG leaders in Kenya. But as of today, I think we still have a lot more to learn, and we have a lot more to learn about how distributors are evolving faster than brands, and how real-time visibility is so important, and AI is just not a buzzword anymore. And businesses have taken that into real consideration, and that's why today's conversation really matters. And we have future leaders who have been a part of this webinar, who has joined us, who will be basically telling us so much more about this. And today I would just like to introduce two of the hosts who are going to be on stream with us today, who I personally interacted with in multiple occasions. First one is Faisal, sir, who I worked with closely, for Hacko for about a year, has taught me a lot about how Hacko system works, how, Hacko functions from end to end, route to market to distribution led models. To give you a little bit insight about him, when I had approached him for the event, his whole key takeaway was how he wanted to inform people and basically folks who are working under him and who look up to him on how he has basically come to the position that he's in, who's he's handling a team, and he's a sales director at Hacko. And I'm pretty sure whenever I'm in meetings with him, he gets 100 calls, and I'm not even exaggerating on this. So his whole aim was to be educate more people on RTM. He's worked about 20 years in route to market with Coca-Cola and with different brands, reshaping them. And he's brought in a lot of structure to Hacko. Hacko being a traditional business, he's brought in a lot of tech enablements into them. He structured them for better productivity. And now we see that because we see like Hacko products on shelf, our shampoos, our beauty products, it's all because of Faisal sir, because he's executing it with his team. So I would like to welcome him on board today. Welcome, Mr. Faisal sir. It's
Thanks,
lovely to
Nick.
have you. Second, I would like to basically welcome Eugene. I've also had multiple conversations with Eugene. Eugene basically has always been very tech savvy, knows what he's doing, has implemented Bizom in TGI as well previously, has worked around Bizom, has worked around major solutions. Again, his key takeaway was traditional businesses really need that lift to bring in productivity, and he also wants to bridge that gap with technology and bring more commercial excellence. And we've had a lot of conversations previously as well on what his aim is and how he wants to bring more tech enablements into this business. And he's also been a key driver into Nigerian markets. Nigeria market is a little bit more complicated, but he's brought in more practical solutions on field. He's basically removed all outdated tech solutions and replaced them with ones that bring in more efficiency. And we have two great folks who has joined us today. And everyone on the chat, whoever is from Africa, please do comment on the chat section where in Africa you belong from, and also do drop in any questions, because maybe you will never get to catch them again, because they're always very busy and it's very hard to get meetings with them on a day-to-day basis. We also struggle. So please do drop any questions on the chat and we'll get them answered for you. So lovely to have both of you here today. And I would like to start and begin my begin and understand more about what the next gen looks like. Just to ask Eugene as first questions, right? You have worked around with multiple solutions over the past, and you've implemented SFA, DMS, van tracking, and incentive system across Nigeria. From your experience, what do you see is the main reason why sales and distributor data often end up inaccurate? Is it manual reporting? Is it system gaps? Or is it distributor hesitation? And even I see that even not just across Nigeria, but it is across Africa that distributors are a little hesitant. So what do you think is the most key highlighted challenge as of today?
All right. Thank you, Shada. And thanks everyone for joining this session. So one thing we've noticed that is the major challenge, for deploying SFA, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? The major challenge we've been having is the misconception, or how companies have been taking this SFA and even van tracking and all of these things. So one major challenge is how people view it, right? People view it from a lens of, we just want to have the app installed, perform trainings and roll out. That's just what it is for a lot of companies today. However, the major challenge is the fact that we do not carry people along enough, as much as we ought to, before we roll out some of these things. And people are the biggest, success to any application that you want to roll out today. So the process most times is always unclear. That's one challenge I've noticed, is that the process is most times always unclear. So people don't really know, okay, what do I even want to automate at this time? What exactly am I trying to, roll out? Right? Am I trying to just automate bad behavior, automate just the process and that's it? Right? People, processes, and systems are involved in this thing. So if you do not automate the right processes, if you do not carry people along, you are definitely going to have issues with, the SFA. And that's one major challenge I personally have noticed, is the fact that, SFA most times fail when we do not carry people along. This it's just like saying we are rolling out the applications and we're not rolling out behaviors, right? Because whenever we roll out these applications, there is a behavioral part to this. That's where the people come in to say, how am I going to accept this application? How am I going to carry this on, several other times, right? It's not just now, it's not just I want to roll out this app, right? This is a new way of working, and I need to carry on things that way. So most times you just do a one-time training and that's it. Most companies just feel, okay, we just need to roll this out, and we just do a one-time training, and you know the whole hype dies after 2 to 3 weeks. Now we have done the trainings, we've done the deployment, what next? Right now you leave people to just go about and do whatever they need to do, and not knowing that there has to be some field back into these things. You have to be more practical, you have to go into the field, understand what are the real scenarios there, right? In order not to have that disconnect between what the realities on field are, and also what you need to achieve with the system. So I feel that major gap has been with people understanding how the behavioral back into these things are. It's not just the application, it is about the people. So
It's really well answered, and I totally agree with that, because I feel like we have huge teams who have no knowledge about how a system works, and they're so new to it. And bringing that change really does matter about how much training is required to make them understand a complex solution like SFA. So I totally agree. Great answer, Eugene. Just to follow it up, I have the next question to Faisal. He handles a lot of team members, under him, and I personally have met, his team, and he has a huge team. And you know as of now, we're in Christmas season, where your products are pushed the most, and your products will sell the most because you will be doing merchandising activities, etc. Because Christmas season, everyone's buying, and brands earn the most, and we see the most productivity during this season. Again, coming back to that is in feet execution, right? As of today, I think that's very, very important, right? And you have worked with large teams, even in Coca-Cola and even today in Hacko. What is the one discipline nobody talks about but determines sales productivity?
So I think that the biggest, one of the biggest deep discipline is once you get this data out of these tools, what are the insights and the decision you get out of them, and how do you define this decision in terms of driving impact? This is one of the gray areas in large teams, and as Eugene has mentioned about behavior, is how do we bring the value and the solution or the SFAs, whatever data tools we are using, to become more of a supportive tool rather than a micromanagement tool. That's how you bring on board the teams. So I think one of the biggest gray areas is in terms of insights and decisions, and that is not at when it's escalated up, but at the user level. This is one of the areas that we find some delays where users must make decisions based on the output of all the data tools that they're using. So it must be real time decision making. There's a huge gap there, and it's going to make a huge difference on how we go to market with the teams.
Very well answered. I'm pretty sure that's why in Christmas time also all your products are stocked up because you've been following all this. Um, Another question to Eugene is, as of today, we see that again, it is very important, as you said, sales productivity is a very important thing as of today. And like that's the key driving factor for any FMCG brand across Africa or anywhere in the world. But my question is that we have large sales teams, but if as even Faisal said, if there is data really backs up a lot of decisions as of today, and in today's world, I think that's the most key indicator about how a brand's going to work or upscale. My question is, one of the biggest problems FMCG brands across the world face is that unreliable data or outlet deduplication, which does really bring down sales morality or sales productivity. If there are fake outlets in the data, it brings a lot of work even to someone who's an IT manager or anybody who works and with data on a day-to-day basis. So my question to you is, what do you think, and why is this persistent gap there where there's a lot of issues with clean data, and how do you ensure that data, there is no outlet deduplication, and you have been on date or on par with data as of today?
Okay, thank you for that question. So, and thanks, Faisal, for that. So the thing, Faisal mentioned something about perspective. How do the team view this tool? Are they viewing it as a micromanagement tool or as a support tool? Because the way they view this tool will go a long way in determining, how they actually make use of the tool, right? The first things first is you want to see people actually accept it. If there is no acceptance, there the system is dead on arrival, right? In one of my programs, there was one law I came across. They call that law the Metcalfe's law. So what the Metcalfe law says is that a system is very important when the number of users using it that has accepted it doubles. So the more people has accepted the system, that's how important the system is. So what would make salesmen today accept a system when they see that it is beginning to help them, right? If they don't see that system as something that is helping them at this time, sales guys would find a way to just let go of anything. Now, I am going to give you a correct data. I'm going to give you everything you need from me, provided I am seeing that this thing is making life easier for me, right? And it's just a digital divide thing, right? So some people are very tech savvy. They see tech as something that has come to make life easier for them, right? But there is a digital divide in the sales world, right? Because we are, employing salesmen. Salesmen don't really want to, they bank more on relationships than even the tech that they are using and stuff like that. So they want to see that this system you are bringing to me is adding more value. Then they would give you most of the correctness of the data you need from them will come out. Because and maybe I might digress a little. The moment companies, whatever you start to track, these guys start to give you. What do I mean by that? Maybe I want to start tracking how many outlet phone numbers you have given me. then you see all of them start, giving you outlet phone numbers, whether correct or not. So we have to do something that goes beyond just saying, oh, this is just a routine, this is what you must do. No, to actually what is happening on ground. And once they can relate the system to what they are actually doing on their in their everyday job, it makes it very easy for you to get correctness in data. If I'm to tell you from a data standpoint, there are some very key things that I need from an outlet, right? I need the outlet, a unique identifier for every outlet. I need a geolocation from my outlets. I need the outlet details, the name, the phone numbers, and all of these things. But if you are, and also one mistake we make that also affects the level or the quality of data we get from the team is sometimes we set unrealistic targets per person. So we do not, factor in what is the potential of the route, which gives you the real picture of what can be obtained. It's just, for instance, I'm saying this route has a potential of just 20 outlets, and you are telling someone to give you 50 outlets from that outlet, from that route. That's not possible. He's going to give you the 20 that is there, and the remaining 30 you are not sure of getting, a correct outlet data, because he's probably going to start duplicating data, start trying to manipulate the data just to meet the target. So we also have to be realistic in some of the targets we set as business leaders, just to ensure that whatever we are requesting from the team, they will give us, because it is in line with the potential of that particular route. And all of this behavior tends to also affect and impact the kind of data we are getting from the team. And we need to start shifting that base from just setting targets and having people just meet the targets to setting it based on realities and having the team give you what would be required from that particular based on their potentials as well. Yeah.
I think because of great leaders like you, I think sales team works very efficiently, and their load is pretty much at ease. That's great. Thank you for that, Eugene. Again, coming back to Faisal. So again, as Eugene said, it is very important to be very realistic with sales targets, and I totally agree that sometimes it can be very overwhelming, and it might not be unrealistic. It's very unrealistic. Faisal, when you come with an expertise of handling a sales team of like a lot of people, right? And you, of course, would be hiring a lot of team, etc. And these people don't really know how to use an SFA solution or a handheld device as of today, because maybe we are evolving, but there are people who do not know how to do this. So how do you ensure that your team is up to date with the solutions that you're implementing in Hacko, or how the use has been done, or and making them more informed about how to go about it, and the initial hand holding that's needed for them to perform you know in favor of the brand.
Thanks, Shadow. So I think you've outright mentioned there's a lot of evolution that has happened in the CPG and FMCG market. When you look at a decade ago or 2 decades ago, especially in Africa, most markets were monopolistic markets where consumers didn't have a lot of alternatives, retailers. So in terms of how you collect data and how you set your KPIs, it was just a straight line: go and recruit an outlet. That But now, as competition has come in, working with the companies that are experienced or expertise in terms of data provision, SFA solution, a lot of companies before were trying to do this internally. But what we've realized as evolution comes is to partner with the right data companies or solution companies, because these are the masters in terms of what solutions, in terms of training, in terms of capability and capacity build up. So for us is we now work closely with those partners, and on a day-to-day basis we get new insights, we understand where the gaps are, and we go granular and what are the outliers in terms of training, what are the training gaps. Then these partners are really helping a lot of companies to really catch up and to be at speed. Then the companies are able now to focus on their core business. As you know, most of the CPG and FMCG companies, they're not specialists in data or solution setups. So the key thing, I think, as we move on and to really speed up is to have the right partners in terms of data, SFA solutions. And most of the companies that have these solutions, they keep on upgrading. They know what is the latest change. Like now, AI has come. A lot of companies that were doing it on themselves now again have to look for how do we move to AI. But when you partner with these companies that specialize on data and solutions for data, then you're always up to date and with the latest solutions. Then in terms of people, then you carry up your salespeople and you build capacity and capability at the right time. Thank you.
Yep, I think that's a good answer. I totally agree with that, especially when a year ago, when I started working with Kenya as a market as a whole, I saw a lot of legacy businesses who didn't, who had in-house solutions that had failed, had spent multiple amount of revenue into building these solutions from scratch, but evolving with time is very hard because you have 100 other things to look into. So what Faisal said really makes sense, and especially with Joshua, who has implemented these solutions in a lot of brands, including JTI was implemented. JTI's Bizom implementation was done by Joshua himself. I just want to ask Joshua, you work with legacy businesses as of today, and you have invested in robust RTM solutions, right? How big is the gap between how these systems are designed and how field sales team actually use them on a day-to-day basis? How do you feel are like insights like missed visits or stockouts, or what are some things that you think need improvement, and what are some things that you think works very well with these systems as of today?
All right. Thank you so much for that question. So one thing I've also come to understand is the fact that there is a gap today, and this gap is coming from the fact that I have a background in tech, so I build apps as well. And one thing we do is we always have system requirements. System requirements are always very big for us as tech people, and we are like, okay, we must get our systems, fully functional. We talk about user requirements at all most times, but most times our app building is guided by system requirements, and system requirements make a lot of assumptions. Let me put it that way, especially SFA platforms, right? So the gap comes from the assumptions that were made that this app will function well under these circumstances. Because when you are doing all your testing from an app point of view, you run all of these tests and it passes the test and that's it, right? But sometimes we fail to also, try these things in the real world and see how it would perform in that regard. So let me give us some example of some of the gaps that we might have. For instance, a system assumes that every SFA platform would work under a perfect network. That's it. But the true reality of things is that not every time you would have a perfect network. You understand? And I work in Nigeria, and there are a lot of times where there will be some places I go to. I probably might not even have connection for the next 2 days I'll be staying there. Why? Because that is how the area is. That's the peculiarity of that area. And anything I want to deploy has to have this, offline bit that says that, oh, I am taking into consideration there is an offline bit, you understand, for the guys in case the network is not working, they can work offline. Another gap I see is the fact that we assume that every devices that these apps to run on, they are going to work smoothly. No, there might be compatibility issues. Sometimes the devices or the choice of the tool, right? Now we're not even talking about the app, the choice of the device that the company would eventually go up with, probably there could be finance backings to it, might not be the best. Because when you take it into the market, some devices overheat. I've been in situations where, because of the choice of device we I used one time, the devices would overheat when the sun is very hot. Now, that's a very big challenge for most of my customers that will be in the north, because in the northern part of Nigeria, we have very hot weathers, right, most of the time. So it means the sales reps cannot work with the device, not because they don't want to work with the device, but you can see that for this period, due to the heat, the devices are offline. That creates a gap, because we expect that these devices would work. When we are creating these applications, we say it should run on Android, it should run on iOS, right? But when it gets to the field, how is the Android going to perform in that region? How is this iOS device going to perform in this terrain and all of these things? So another issue we also have is that we expect that users follow workflow. We expect that the users just do everything as the device would have said. But remember, there are a lot of factors now. Not like we are encouraging bad behavior. Thank God we're even in a International Fraud Awareness Week. I think this is the week for International Fraud Awareness. One thing we try to do is to ensure that people follow due process most of the time, right? But one thing we need to understand is not everybody would follow due process, and a system assuming that everyone is going to follow due process is most likely just assuming the worst, assuming the best when there could be worst case scenarios, because people, there could be a lot of factors that could impact them not following process. Their incentives might be a factor, DBs might be a factor, a lot of other things might be a factor that would create that gap. So what can we do, from a system standpoint to also curb this gap, or take away these gaps that are there? Number one, we have to be more user centric. From a building standpoint, we that are building the applications, we have to be more user centric. Our tests needs to move from this system is working to what is going to be the performance of this system on the field, right? I remember when I used to deploy SFA, then I would leave my house and start trekking to these outlets one by one to check the performance of this SFA, right? I remember one time we wanted to deploy a this geofencing, right? I would go 100 meters from every of these outlets to test that this feature is working. That is me putting myself in the space of the sales rep. Now, if that system doesn't work tomorrow, I know there is a human back into it. Someone doesn't want the system to work, not because it's not going to work, because I have done due diligence from my hand to say I have put all this in checks and this system has to work, right? So we need to move away from just building systems and imposing it on people based on the tests we have conducted, to actually doing more of the online checks. And also from a business point of view, we have to be realistic, because another gap might arise, like I said earlier, when we set unrealistic targets, when the kind of things you are tracking are not, they are not focused on driving data, cleanliness of the data, you'll see a lot of errors. It's just like saying, I'm telling you, I'm going to pay you for volumes, and the volume target I'm setting to you are unrealistic. As a sales rep, most times they will start hiding the stocks. All this they can do on the device, because this device is a garbage in, garbage out. So whatever I input is what you see. So when, as businesses, we set unrealistic targets, we also create that gap from the realities of what we need. So we have to, one, first be fair on a business standpoint, to be sure that we are not putting these people in a position where they have to also create that gap for us. And also we have to be more intentional about the kind of tests we do, to be sure that whatever decision we are taking as a business, the choice of devices, everything has to be end to end, and be sure that it will perform in any of the situations we put it. There might be exceptions, but it shouldn't be too much most of the times that we cannot handle.
Got it, Eugene. That was a really nice answer, and I like it. It is right that an app should be very user friendly and user centric. And you mentioned a lot of challenges about how companies also put in a lot of unrealistic targets, which is very real, which is very fair. Coming back to, we've discussed about a lot of gaps in, our SFA solutions, or how SFA solutions can be better. But another question that I have with, just to continue this conversation, is that now we're talking about more of distributors, right? When it comes to Africa is a very distribution led model. And I've also been trying to decode this question, and I would like to ask Faisal is, distributor accountability and managing distribution relation is very tricky. And I wanted to ask you, what frameworks do you use, or systems do you use, in Hacko, to, balance this trust with the distributor to maintain this relationship? Because we have a lot of distributors, and basically distributors have more power than a brand themselves in a, a, in a place like Africa. So I just wanted you to answer that for me.
Thank you. So one of the key areas you're focusing on when it comes to distributors is how do you bring distributors on board as your partners? There's been a lot of mistrust sometimes in terms of data, what you do with data. Is it are you making decision on the distributors? Because remember, for the distributors, how I see the distributors, this is their job. It's their career. It's just like today on my career. Anything that is going to threaten my career, I'd be quite uncomfortable about it, or my position, and I'd need to get more information on trust. So I think is how now we package how we are dealing with the distributors, and what is the motivation in terms of the value chain. So we brought real data, or real intelligence data, into the value chain conversation, whereby when we get data, what is in it for the distributor? And the good thing, there are a lot of rebates we are paying across with the distributors. So we are also motivating distributors to provide the right data for us to make the right decision, and to build trust. Because at the end of it, when you grow and your partners grow, then you're in it for everybody in the ecosystem enjoys the fruit of what's happening. And also, in terms of data, when you're dealing with the distributors, is also for them to understand what is the bigger objective of this, in terms of the business, in terms of their business. A lot of FMCG or CPG, in the past we've been working about what is in it for the company, but it's natural for the partners and the distributors first, when you approach them, is to understand how is this going to help my business, because they look at their P&L and L and their margins, and remember, some of them have multiple principles. So in terms of how you managing their time. And the other bigger thing is also the logistical nightmare of Africa. So this is one of the areas we are working closely with the distributors to try and resolve this, and also give them visibility on the next opportunities for growth, and where the business is going to move forward. Because remember, when you're discussing with the distributors, the biggest challenge of distribution partners, is when you give them targets, they always feel that these targets are too high. So when you work with data, they easily see the opportunity. And again, you focus on areas where is this opportunity. How do you aggregate your retailers? How do you aggregate the demand for them? Which are the areas when they go to, they're going to succeed. So that alignment and partnership is what has really changed how we work with our distributors currently in the different markets.
Yes, I think decoding the whole distributor relationship has been explained very well. Something that we've all been trying to figure out in Africa. Um, just another question to top it up, Joshua, is yes, we do, incentivize a lot of reps, for motivation, etc. But how do you basically incentivize your distributors? Do you basically do it with incentives, or how do you basically bring that accuracy with your distributors as well, who are on board as of today?
All right. So one thing we've noticed is that distributors are always careful, just like Afezal has said. Distributors are always careful to release some information to you. Some of this information to them, they are privileged. It's just like asking a distributor to release the data of his retailers or of his wholesalers most times to you. A distributor will be reluctant to doing that because number one, he's scared of audits, he's scared of all of these things. He doesn't want to expose himself just like that. So he is most likely going to give you the wrong data because he feels, why do you need the data from my own business shareholders and all of this thing. So what we've done is that we try to incentivize the distributors, right, in such a way that they would earn from actually providing this data accurately. So there is always an end to end. What I've tried to do most times in every business I work is to see that, what are those things first, what are those things that would cause this person to withhold their stocks. What are they even scared of, right? Are they scared of, audit? Are they scared of, whatever? I just first try to find the reason behind they are wanting to keep these data. Then we try to design an incentive that will reward them for best behavior. So what we do is we try to create a certain percentage of their overall incentive to say goes to, number one, the quality of the secondary sales you are giving to us, which we're also going to check with your, secondary sales. We also try to pay them for some GTM KPIs, right? For some route to market KPIs to say, I'm going to pay you for calls. I'm going to pay you for. So this also encourages the distributor to force the sales rep to be compliant, right? So majority of the big companies, one thing I've noticed about majority of the big companies in Nigeria is that they do not they leave the role of employing sales reps to the distributors. So the distributors are even responsible for employing the sales reps, employing. So the success of your SFA or any solution we are bringing to them is hinged on the acceptance from the distributor. So one thing we try to do is to ensure that we encourage the distributor, giving them a certain incentive, not so much, because if the incentive is too much at the same time, they can try to game the system to earn it. So we try to be fair with the incentive, something that will keep them doing the right thing. Most times the incentive might even be enough to cover the salaries of the sales reps. So it gives them that, feel of, I can actually tell this person all they need to know. I can actually push these guys because one part of their cost is going to be taken off by just compliance. So we try to incentivize the distributors. We also try to emphasize the need for, correctness of the data, because any wrong data you give to us today, we are going to build your targets based on that next time. So if you are giving us a wrong sellout this quarter, next quarter we are building on that to set a new target for you. And you probably did not sell the stock. You kept it in your warehouse and you are telling us you sold it. Now we have built a new target. We've increased your target. The stocks are still there. Your capital is tied down. You cannot even order new stocks. So all of these things just put you in a mess. So we also try to make distributors see the problem that might arise from giving us wrong data, and also this encourages the distributor, to start doing the right thing, to start following the right behavior, and all of these things in managing the thing. And we just try to, like I said, every single thing with a distributor is very, very, one thing about incentive is that they shape the behavior of people. One thing about incentive is that they shape the behavior of people, and one thing behaviors will do is that they shape data. So if the behavior is right, they will shape the data. If the incentive is good, it will shape the behavior of the persons. So good incentive, good behavior, bad data, good behavior, good data, something like that.
Got it. That really answers the question, Eugene. So if you, as Eugene said, data really data and basically incentives really help with managing distributors. But I wanted to ask Faisal that in Kenya, even when I visited multiple times, I see that there are distributors who handle major brands like Sunquick and Roku independently. But why does secondary sales data sometimes get lost? Is it distributors are they scared of audits, lack of systems, or fatigue? And how do you handle this in Hacko personally?
Right. So, yeah, that is a major challenge currently in Kenya and some African markets, where monitoring secondary sales, we find that sales is lost at through the value chain. And you're right, because when you look at some of the distributors, they've been in the business for the last 50 years in the same business, and things have been working manually. So a lot of things they've not evolved in terms of systems. So we have also a challenge or a gap in upgrading of systems, where a lot of secondary sales still is at manual level. And also because they are running multiple products, you find a distributor who is running a lot of multiple products. So sometimes to get a unified solution to capture the secondary sales become one of the biggest challenge. And this is where also partnership plays a lot. Who is going to bring what kind of solution do you want? And AI now has really evolved, and it should be one of the areas we should look at in terms of trying to synchronize this data and make it simpler for us to get secondary sales data and accurate sales data. Because remember, also there is some motivation that most companies give in terms of secondary data and also in terms of stock holding. So what I can say is that, remember, at the end of it is that data, or the dashboards that come out of data, they tell you about what is the status of your business. What I see it is like, it's like a health check for your business. So some distributors don't want to really provide the full data, seeing that you'll see what are the signs of challenges in terms of their business health. However, as you sell this idea to the distributors, is you think, out of these dashboards, how am I going to help my distributor in terms of the different challenges? Because remember, secondary sales is related to stock holding, is related to primary sales. So sometimes when the secondary sales is higher, we demand for the stocks to be refilled. and the primary sales to come. But there is a challenge in terms of finance. So this tries to be hidden in between because of that challenge. So is you have to build an ecosystem of this so that you understand these secondary sales is talking to primary sales, is talking to what you're holding in the market, and it's talking to the financial health of your distributor. Once you build all these from an ecosystem view, then it becomes a very easy conversation. And then now you don't have the wrong secondary sales data, you don't have the wrong primary sales data, and you don't have the wrong data's data, because all these have a relationship where the distributor understands that yes, if your secondary sales are low, we'll try and come up with a solution and boost that secondary sales, because you already have the dashboard from the real data. And that's why data is a key catalyst across most of these African problems we've had in the past and as we move into the future. Thank you.
um, got a lot of understanding how we can tackle basically distribution led problems in, at least in Kenya as of today. Basically having good data, which is a good insight for any brand who's upcoming as well, and trying to get in touch in get much more in sync with distributors as of today. um Again, just got a lot of understanding about Kenya, but I wanted to ask Eugene, in Lagos, distributors often carry multiple brands, and how do you basically manage conflict of interest while ensuring accurate sales reporting? Because I know some brands who even manage Coca-Cola and Pepsi at the same time, and that's a lot of war even happening in LinkedIn, etc., especially in Africa. So how do you, as a you know as as a FMCG company, manage that?
Okay, so one thing is that just like Feza had mentioned, the ecosystem is very important, and I would love to see this ecosystem as individual to every distributor. Every distributor have their own ecosystem, right, for each of the brands. So just like saying, as a distributor, I am an ecosystem, I have sub ecosystems for each of the other brands I'm handling. One thing is that you cannot really control how they deal with other businesses because it is their investment, right? So you cannot really control how they deal with that investment. However, what you can control is how they deal with your own business. So one thing I've noticed in time past is that to us, we are seeing this as just our own business. But to them, they are seeing all other brands as a collective thing. So sometimes what they do is they probably might take, not all, but few. In short, the truth is most of them, provided they are not exclusive to your business, this would always happen, which is they might take money from your business, use it to transact in another business. It's just like saying they are like a financial, how will I put it? They are financially very sensitive. So they look for which business is giving them the most money. They quickly move money from your business to another. Then they try to transact, get more profits, come back to your business. They just keep doing that. Recently in Nigeria, yeah, majority of the distributors, we noticed that they stopped buying. In one of my businesses one time, where I was working at the time, they stopped buying. Now, when we try to investigate why they were no longer buying, it will surprise you. It's interesting to note that these guys went to invest money in commodity business. They took out money from our business totally to go and invest in commodity. So we were not getting sales anymore. We were like, what is the problem? Now, we try to advise them from the business standpoint that commodity business is very it fluctuates a lot because it's held very dependent on your border sales and border patrols and all of these things. Now, most of them did not listen. Now, the moment there was a particular word from our president to say now border sales can now happen, this commodity goods started coming in at a large number, in their large numbers. We noticed that majority of them had lost so much. Now imagine I was buying something at maybe 500, now I have to sell it at 250 because the prices have crashed. So majority of them lost a lot of money. So that is always very bound to happen, especially in Nigeria. We have a lot of opportunists here, right? We take every opportunity like fast, fast, fast. We don't want to. So if I hear this brand is moving, I quickly move money from this business to that business. So that would continue to happen because number one, we cannot control the investment of these guys. However, what we try to do as a business is to stay afloat, when compared with our competitors, to be sure I am giving you the right. The truth is, you will hear us mention incentives a lot. You will hear Fraser mention incentives a lot because for distributors, that is why they are even having anything to do with you in the first place. So if your incentives are right, if your incentives are kept at a very reasonable level, you are not too high from the competition, you are not too low from competition, that keeps you afloat, and that also helps you maintain a very good business deal with your DB, such that even if they are transacting with other competition, they can still give your own business enough that you need to stay afloat with them, because they are your major partners at the end of the day.
That's really well covered, Eugene. I think this whole session we've covered about, we've covered SFA, we've covered the, how distribution channel works. We've covered about how, brands should be more focused and customer centric as well, and be more understanding, and just, to understand more about how the future looks like. I have a last round of questions, sadly, to both our leaders. I would want to ask Faisal, you've started working, in this industry from a long time, and I wanted to ask you that if you look back 5 to 10 years ago, even before you joined Hacko, what kind of predictive intelligence would you have changed the way you built RTM systems? Like, example, would you have had more insights on the app? Would you have more optimized routes across Kenya? What would that one thing be?
Great question. The biggest one would be last mile visibility. I think these 10 years ago would have made a huge difference on how CPG or FMCG companies approach the market. A lot of focus was at distribution and the wholesale level, but the game changer is at the last mile. So visibility there would have really been a huge game changer, because it talks a lot about what's happening in the retail. And this, at the end of the day, this is where the consumers make decisions. This is really where your brand moves, because once you have visibility on off shelf offtake at retail level, it tells you a lot about what's happening to your brand. Because sometimes you have great primary sales, you have great wholesale sales, but stock seems to be stuck somewhere. So that gray area delayed a lot of decisions in the last 10, 20 years, which is now a huge difference when you look at a lot of FMCGs and data dashboards. This last mile is the game changer for me. It's the game changer.
That's really nice, Faisal. Now, Joshua, being someone who's been very, tech savvy, has always implemented multiple solutions. If you had to add to the vision of RTM 2020, 2030, what would you say is the right system stack for Africa? What are 4 to 5 things that should absolutely exist and could be a very key takeaway for brands who are just adopting to solutions as of today, and especially for traditional and legacy brands as well? What would you say are the few things that 4 5 key things that you would like to share?
Hmm. Okay, that's a big one. Well, now we are diving into the future. So, truly, like I think Faisal mentioned one very important point, which is having the end-to-end view into everything that goes on, right? End-to-end view. Now, maybe one first thing I would want to say is number one would be having a real-time, mobility, right? I want a real-time solution where at every single time from now, the truth is you might say real time, not every solutions today are real time, right? Majority of them are probably a day before, a day after, 2 days after, right? But a real time solution informs a lot of decisions, right? And one thing one must understand is the fact that we have to be proactive rather than being reactive, going into the future, right? If we are just waiting till something goes bad, like Faisal had said, I think when the pipeline gets blocked, you notice something starts to happen. Your primary sales begins to reduce, and your primary sales are reducing not because you are no longer selling, or because you don't want to sell the product. It's probably because at the retail end, like he said, or the wholesale leg, the pipeline is blocked. And once the pipeline is blocked, subsequent sales cannot come in. So I remember, especially in Nigeria here, majority of them, of the customers, operate on a credit basis. So if they are operating on a credit facility with you as a distributor, they've not paid you back. So you don't even have money to buy back if you want to. So that's real-time visibility, and also with an offline first capability, because we need to also have a view, to say, even if things go bad, can we still work, right? So that offline capability has to be there as well. So number one, I would say real time. Let us have a real time system that gives us updates into everything. Another thing I would say is, let's have like an integrated stock visibility. Now, let's know how stocks is moving from the primary leg down till the final consumer. Because one very big gray area I am noticing today, especially from majority of the SFAs today, that we have still not been able to solve, which I hope in the future, coming future, we would be able to solve, is the fact that we are having that gap in seeing how has this stock moved from the business down to the final consumer. So when you want to actually get that information today, it costs a lot, because you have to use agencies to go and start doing store audits. You have to do all of those things just to have an idea of how much stock you have in the pipeline. So that's full end-to-end integration to say I'm able to track a particular product from when it was produced through an SFA platform down to the very end. It gives a very robust, you understand, stack, and it's something I feel the RTM 2030 stack should have for Africa. Number one, that real-time mobility. Two, we also want to have that integrated stock approach to say we can monitor our stocks end to end. We can see how it has moved from the company, from production itself down to the final consumer. Then we know at every time where is this stock, stagnant. Then we can also provide supports wherever needed. Another thing I would say is intelligent route mapping. We have to also be very, very you know structured in the way we plan our beats, because currently today there are a lot of planning of beats that are not even the best, right? We see a lot of people that have not optimized their visits, right? Now, this is happening because the system has not given them the capability enough, even though it's there, right? The system should be able to do a lot of prompting. We have seen independent systems that do specifically just route optimization, right? We want to have that robust SFA going into 2030 that can also bring in this route optimization approach into whatever systems we are building, to say, based on the outlets you have given us, the system can automatically plan these routes for you, giving you the shortest distance first, so you don't have to spend too much money in terms of how you travel and all of these things. And another thing I would like to say, this is also a business end, is from a business standpoint, to say businesses should provide incentives from an hygiene standpoint. Right now, what do I mean by that? So incentives should be linked to data hygiene, right? Because if your incentives are not linked to data hygiene, you will just be going around in circles, because you are creating an incentive that people can easily gain. That's only going to defeat the purpose. So even if we go into the future, the system is still going to be garbage in, garbage out in the future. Now, the fear of salesmen thinking, oh, AI is going to take our job. I think AI can take a lot of jobs, but one job AI might not be able to take will be the job of a salesman, because sales is very hinged on relationships, right? Sales is very hinged on relationships, and you need a salesman to actually create that relationship with their customers. So the fear first has to be taken away. And so whatever incentives you are creating for these guys, it has to be linked to hygiene, because these people will still remain. Processes will remain, but people would always make sure the system work. Without people, there is a very good chance systems will not work. So we need to also, I think these are four I've mentioned, which is the real-time mobility, integrated stock, having that integrated stock view, and also looking at the intelligence route mapping and all of these things, and also how we can create incentives that are linked to data hygiene, so we can have a very correct data coming from the team even in the coming future.
I like how you've answered everything, from a business point of view, because I feel like any solution that comes in, and anything that a brand should deploy should, in the end of the day, always leverage the business to grow. And I think our chat is filled, and I think I neglected the chat too much because we have a lot of questions. So I would like to bring both the panelists and ask them a few questions. And you can also meet Faisal sir if you are in Kenya or any vicinity in Kenya. You can meet him on the 21st. in our event that we are hosting in Hotel Glee, and I think Faisal sir would be there, and you can definitely come up to him and ask him questions. Unfortunately, Eugene is in Nigeria, but hopefully, when we host the next event in Nigeria, you will definitely be able to answer, all these questions in the chat. But just we'll pick up one to two questions, and which seems most relevant is what role does financing or investment play in scaling RTM models in Africa? Are there specific sectors or regions where RTM innovation could use more funding or support?
So, great. So this is from a financial perspective. So I think one of the things the finance plays big time. Remember what I said about sales has evolved, especially at the bigger decision making, sales manager level, regional sales, national sales. More of the sales people now are working from a P&L perspective, and this is where finance becomes very key. And also, in terms of when we're talking about finance or funding, especially in Africa, we've seen we do not have the best solutions. So, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of its funding, companies that provide solutions, infrastructure is the big one. My colleague here has talked about devices. In terms of what kind of devices do we require to ensure that we are getting the right SFA tool working. So, and remember, devices keep on evolving, and it's a costly affair. So, this is also finance comes in terms of funding route to market and AI solution. I think that for me that is the big one, because installing again solution at distributor level is another way also finance plays a big part, because remember also not all distributors can easily afford to have the right systems. So in terms of these financial partnerships, this is where the finance aspect comes into in funding the route to market models and data access to data.
That's amazing. I hope that answered your question. I think I would want Eugene to answer one last question before we end this. What are some emerging consumer trends or behaviors do you think RTM leaders should pay attention to when developing strategies for the next 5 years?
Okay. So the thing is, one thing I would say is for the emerging consumer trends and behaviors that RTM leaders should pay attention when developing. So I think the businesses now are beginning to move to more a a pre-sale model, and I would say the reason why I'm saying that is because most people are beginning to try to cut costs, the cost of cost to serve. So they are trying to reduce the cost to serve. So one thing we are trying to notice, or where we are beginning to notice, is that the cost to serve, a lot of people want to cut cost, and it's still like a financial thing. Based on what Faisal said, finances are actually driving a lot of things, whether you like it or not. But one major thing, apart from even P&L, is also the cost to serve. People are very, very careful of their cost to serve, and for consumers, we are noticing that majority of them, there is a seasonal approach to when they buy, how they buy, those kind of things. So we also need to adapt our systems to take cognizance of these peak periods as well, right? We should not just be static to expecting the sales every single time, right? So I think in the coming future, leaders also need to take cognizance of the fact that there could be peak periods, right? There are peak periods. It's even normal. We are approaching the end of the year. This is a time where we can see that. And one other trend, which I wouldn't want to lose, is the fact that people are now going for quantity over quality. People are going for quantity over quality. So, and it's coming from the fact that, considering how the economic situation is taking a downturn now. I wouldn't want to speak for Nigeria alone, and I know the same is happening in a couple of other African countries. So the sales are reduced. So we want, probably sales leaders need to focus on RCM would help us see these trends and plan ahead for them. So one thing we are trying to see is that we get more insightful data, especially data across the numeric distribution, the weighted distribution. We also need to understand, when is our drop size even going down? What do we need to do to fit into, the demands of our customers at this point? So something very dynamic, that would also help us keep a view into how this customer behavior, because it keeps changing. Honestly, Shada, I must tell you that the trend keeps changing. It's not something I can tell you is this today, tomorrow it's something else, right? I wish I was in Kenya right now to see how things operate there, but the Nigerian market is very volatile. Trust me, you are running A today, tomorrow everybody is going to B, next tomorrow everybody's going to C. So it is very volatile. But one thing that is common is the fact that the numbers don't lie, right? We cannot argue with data, right? The data is going to show us when we are losing it. We will perform a lot of consumer engagement to understand why we are losing it. And RTM will keep giving us that visibility, and we'll try to be very agile and adapt to whatever changes that comes, even in the coming years.
That really answers, but I couldn't ignore the last two questions that are there on the chat. It's very interesting, and even I'm looking for answers to these questions. So there's a question that asks, how does distribution manage margin structure influence stock intake behavior, bearing in mind that secondary sales success is what redefines RTM success? I think Faisal sir should answer that because Kenya
Yeah.
has a huge monopoly of distribution led problems.
So I think is how you position your incentive. So that there are three levels, as we've said in the ecosystem. There's the primary level, and these are the sales the distributor buys from the company. Then there's the wholesale level, what the distributor sells to the wholesalers, and what we call now tertiary level, what goes to the retailer, and also secondary level, what the retailers, secondary level, what goes to the retailers, and tertiary level, what goes to the consumer. So, at what point you want to give the incentive depends on your entry plan in the market. So, for example, if you are entering a new market, first you want to stock up the distributors and the wholesalers. So, the incentive would really be skewed to that. But where you are well established, now this incentive is where now you move more of the weight of your incentive to secondary sales. So that gives the distributors focus on secondary sales. So this is how you drive the incentive schemes, and also the kind of trade interventions you are doing are more skewed towards the secondary sales level. That drives now focus, the distributor focus to think about secondaries, because he's making more money or incentive out of driving more secondary sales for you. So that's how we view this in terms of driving the secondary sales focus, using the incentive as a tool to do that.
That I think that should have answered the question. There's another very interesting question. In line with merchant communication, what's your view of accessing data using agentic voice AI? Bearing in mind that the voice call still stops messaging. I think it's a more tech related question, and Eugene should take it up and help us with this.
Okay, I'm
So,
trying to understand the question. What's your view of accessing data using agentic voice AI? Bearing in mind that voice calls still tops messaging. Okay. All right. So for this, I think this particular question is trying to say, in line with merchant communication, what's your view of accessing data using agentic voice AI? Bearing in mind that voice calls still tops messaging. Okay, okay. If I'm trying to understand this question, is more like saying, uh, how can we continue to, or what's going to be the view of how AI, being used to respond to calls is going to be perceived by the people. I'm just trying to get that question. Just I don't know if the person who asked can maybe clarify. I don't know if Fraser you understand the question.
maybe I can just try to give it a short based on my perspective. So, in line with the merchant, if we want to communicate with the merchants, how we use the AI voice, because he's saying voice calls top messaging. Most people use voice calls to talk to people. So I
Yeah.
think the key thing is in terms of why people use messaging is how the merchants remember when in real market situation the merchant is busy dealing with consumers, all this they rarely pick any voice call when you want to access data. That's why people end up using messaging, because in terms of messaging, when they're not busy in the outlet, they can easily answer or give you back feedback on data. That's why most people try to use messaging data, and also try to use apps, because some in apps at the retail level or merchant level, they're using the app while still transacting. But remember, on a voice call, it distracts them from their day to day. So that's why most companies tend to end up using messaging or kind of app solution. Yes, voice AI can be used, but in defined kind of merchants where the outlets are not so busy, or the merchant is not so busy, or the person giving back data is not the person dealing with the consumers, or it's not a high traffic kind of ecosystem. So we have different solution. I know this is kind of now what is top of mind because of AI, but it tends mainly to be used mainly at consumer end, because it would be voice chats would mainly be used at consumer level, where they're engaging with the consumer. At merchant level, still messaging and app is still top of mind currently. But
I think that was answered to you, Ronald. And I would like to thank both our leaders for coming and joining us. I know you guys have very busy schedules, but you've answered all of the questions, and hopefully everyone's found it very, very insightful. And we've seen Africa's FMCG ecosystem is moving faster than ever, and it is powered by technology, data, and relentless execution, especially by leaders like this. And I think the future, from where a year it started, I think it's already been shaped. And leaders like you guys really help that enablement happen. And um, and if you guys have dropped more questions, Bizom and our team will get back and answer them to you personally. And also, you can meet our leaders in events that we keep hosting, so keep following our LinkedIn page and be updated. Thank you so much for this. Hope all of you have a very good day. Bye bye.
goodbye and
Thank you.
thank you everyone, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Faisal.
Thanks, Sijin. Have a great day in Nigeria.
And you too.
All right, bye bye.